Hey everyone, Yoyston here, and I hope you have all had a great weekend and Thanksgiving if you celebrate it. Last Thursday we passed 50,000 subscribers, and honestly it's just so incredible and humbling. I really appreciate each and every one of you, and your support goes a long way in helping this channel. Today I wanted to answer some questions that you all have left for me on Facebook, Twitter, and some comment sections, and show just how much Tolkien's works mean to me personally. Without further ado, let's begin. These first questions come from my followers on Facebook. Francesco asks, what is your favorite Tolkien book? To that, I would have to say The Return of the King. Don't get me wrong, I love them all. But in The Return of the King, all of the emotions and characters find their climax in virtue. Whether it's Aragorn leading his forces to certain doom, Theoden saving Gondor with his Eorlingas, or Sam saving his master from the Tower of Cirith Ungol. It gives me chills every time. And honestly, it's the book that moved me to tears the most out of all fiction. It really is a great story. The next question is from Javier, and he asks, is Yoyston your real name or a pseudonym? What is the etymology of it? That's a great question, and one that I've wanted to answer for a while, but no, Yoyston is not my real name. I came up with that name about 7.5 years ago on the Lord of the Rings Online. When you make a character, they give you certain prefixes and suffixes that fit with that character, and Yoy was a word from my childhood, mixed with one of the game's suffixes, Stan, so I created Yoyston, a captain of Rohan on Lord of the Rings Online. That is my main character, so I used his name as my pseudonym for this channel. Christian asks, if you could live in Middle-earth, what race and profession would you be? Personally, I think I would want to be a ranger, one of the Dunedain of Eriador, protecting the free peoples from harm, even if those I protect had no idea who I was. That would be so much fun, always exploring the wild, meeting new people, visiting the Shire every so often, and having allies against the orcs and the servants of Sauron. The Arnorians also have such a rich culture, I think that's what I would want to be, yeah. Our last Facebook question comes from Sean. What is your favorite story in the Lord of the Rings universe, and why? That is a very tough question to answer, but in all honesty, I would have to say The Lord of the Rings. It goes through the wide spectrum of emotion, from inspiration to sorrow, from joy to fear. It's really all there, and my two favorite characters, Sam and Aragorn, both go through their story arcs in these 3 books. The full histories of these 2 characters are really just fantastic. Now, as time goes on, and I further delve into Tolkien's works, that question may be harder to answer, but for now, I would say The Lord of the Rings is definitely my favorite story, with emphasis on Sam and Aragorn's stories. That's it for Facebook questions, now moving on to Twitter. Our first comes from Arrow. If you were granted one question to ask J.R.R. Tolkien, what would it be? I would want to ask, what are his favorite parts of his own writings? I think it would be really interesting to know what parts he likes. With that answer, I would want to go back and read those sections again and see if I can tell that those are his favorites. If I could see any difference in his writings in those passages, I think it would reveal many overall themes that Tolkien valued the most and wanted to frame his works around. Because if he puts so much emphasis on one section but not certain other sections, you could tell that that one meant the most to him. It would give me a whole new slant on how to read those parts and his works overall. What literary lenses I should use, what I can kind of toss aside. It would be very interesting, and it would really open my eyes to how he perceived his own abilities and writings. The next question is from Max. How did you get into Tolkien's works? When I was a kid, Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings movies were just released, and my dad really likes those movies, so he introduced my brother and I to them, and we just fell in love with those movies. We played most of the video games that came out of them too, anywhere from Battle for Middle-earth to The Lord of the Rings The Third Age, that Hobbit video game that was in the early 2000s, and Lego Lord of the Rings, just about all of them. Ever since, my family has been made of big Tolkien fans. Honestly, our house and my apartment is full of Middle-earth items. Over many years, the Legendarium has impacted not only my life, but my family as well, and Tolkien's works are a large part of why I am who I am today. So now, whenever I see or experience anything to do with Tolkien's works, it just reminds me of my childhood, my family, and it really brings me a lot of joy. That's it for Twitter questions. If you didn't see your question answered here that you left on Facebook or Twitter, I have left you a written response. Now for a few YouTube questions. First, Alternative Movies asks, what are your favorite scenes/moments in The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings trilogies? That's really difficult to answer, as so many of the moments in those movies are really great and emotional, but overall I would have to say that the scenes that are the most truthful to how Tolkien wrote a specific character are the best. For instance, in The Return of the King, when a troll is trying to break through a door during the Siege of Minas Tirith, Gandalf tells Pippin about the illusion of fear in death. Rather than death being the end, it reveals another land and life, previously hidden by the veil of this reality. That scene is one where we as an audience see the true Pippin and Gandalf the White, close, if not perfectly aligned with how Tolkien wrote those characters. Another example is Bilbo in the Battle of the Five Armies, when Thorin thinks he has the Arkenstone in his hands, but it is actually an acorn from Beorn's garden. Bilbo says that he'll plant it, and it will remind him of all that had happened. Even though I do have my problems with the Hobbit trilogy, that I'll talk about in another video sometime soon, in that moment we get Bilbo Baggins on screen. Finally, for those few seconds, I believe that The Hobbit that Tolkien created so many years ago finally got a bit of screen time. Moments like those are my favorites in the two trilogies, as they get the characters so right. And even though each movie of those two trilogies has their own flaws, I'll always really appreciate and like them for what they are, as they've helped me become who I am today. DL44 asks, what is your favorite moment in all of The Lord of the Rings? Whew, I thought the other questions were hard. I can't narrow it down to just one moment in the books or the movies, as each moment relies on another for full emotional impact, but one moment does come to mind. I could tell you about it and what it is, but, I think I would rather show you. At that sound, the bent shape of the king sprang suddenly erect. Tall and proud he seemed again, and rising in his stirrups, he cried in a loud voice, more clear than any there had ever heard a mortal man achieve before. Arise! Arise, riders of Theoden! Fell deeds awake, fire and slaughter. Spear shall be shaken, shield be splintered. A sword day, a red day, ere the sun rises. Ride now! Ride now! Ride to Gondor! With that, he seized a great horn from Guthlaf, his banner-bearer, and he blew such a blast upon it that it burst asunder. And straightway all the horns in the host were lifted up in music, and the blowing of the horns of Rohan in that hour was like a storm upon the plain, and a thunder in the mountains. Ride now! Ride now! Ride to Gondor! Yeah, that is definitely one of my favorite moments from all of Tolkien's writings. And I think that is a great place to end this Q&A. Thank you all so much for watching, I really appreciate it. Also, a big thanks to those of you who left me such incredible questions to work with. This was really quite fun. I like to take time during certain milestones like this to help you all get to know me a bit better as a Tolkien fan and as a friend. That way, as we continue our journey through Tolkien's works together, we'll understand each other a bit more. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button and share this video with a friend who you think might enjoy it. And if you'd like to see more Q&As like this on a different schedule than my normal uploads, like once a month on a different day than Sunday, please just let me know in the comments below. To contact me more directly, please join us on Facebook and Twitter through the links in the description below, and subscribe to see my next Middle-earth videos. Next week, we will continue to look at the early days of Arda and the Two Trees of Valinor. I have some awesome content planned for you all in the coming weeks and months, and I can't wait to release it all to you. As always, thank you all for joining me on this adventure. Until the next one, my friends.